Somebody asked how to paint the windows in this, like on those cars. Well, it's basically hand-painted blending, so I will just try to show you how to use it. I use those, basically those 4 paints and medium. So this is the basic paint is dark blue gray. So this is like, you know, what you would use for the Germans in World War II. Basically, this is like darker shadow gray. So you can start with shadow gray, but you will get much more bluish hue. Then I use pale blue gray. Still, there is some blue in here, so like it would reflect a sky. Those colors work perfectly fine with our infinity mats. Then I use some black, but just a little bit. Pure white, just white scar layer. It's not perfect, but that's what I have. And some matte medium. Then this is something that I may not really need for it, but if you are not very fast painter with blending, then this is something you will need. So aside from it, let's just start. Just mix it up, add some paint. This is starting to get really thick right now. I don't have any water here, but I will just use my tea. Yeah, perfectly fine tip. Yeah. So I just use a base coat of the dark blue gray. Yeah, dark blue gray. Why not black? Yeah, because I don't want it black. I want it to be this hue. Black is just too dark, and I like to work, when I paint with paintbrush, I like to work from the middle color in both ways. So I start with the color that will be predominant, and I highlight and shade. So this is just the base coat. Let it dry a little bit. I will just show it on maybe this window and the big window, because the big window is something that most likely will be a problem for most of you. So I will just put some tips. It was a bit, maybe not problematic, but it was sort of a challenge for me also. So just paint the undercoat, the base coat. With blending, you really want to have your base coat, the middle color that will be on the most of the area that you will be blending, but you want it on the whole surface, so that you are not limited by what color is underneath. With your blending, you can just blend, basically. So, because when you blend paint, it will lose the coverage in some places. It will be thinner there, and maybe one more, because smaller windows also need some love. So let's just add a base coat here. Yeah. You may want to be careful with actually keeping in the lines, but I believe that's in the kindergarten, so you should be covered in this area. Yeah. I'm not, yeah, but I don't care. Okay, so now we need to wait for it to dry. Okay, so after some vigorous drying, let's start with actual blending. So I will use now pale blue gray, so you can use your Space Wolf gray or any other not really white or not really pure gray, but a little bit bluish color. This is basically to let it look like it reflects the sky, and the sky is most likely blue, or in our area most likely gray. So blue and gray is sort of alright. So now we just apply it generally in the area that will be the brightest. So, and if you ever follow a gem painting tutorial, then you know that if a light comes into the gem, then this is the darkest area and this is the brightest. Yeah, so I use the same for the windows. It really doesn't really have any relevance to it. It just looks cool. So because the window normally would have some strikes and some reflections in there and some differentiation, it's just way too much to actually put into this small area. It can be done, definitely it can be done, but it requires some photographic photographs to actually go after, because if you just start playing with your paintbrush, then you are risking that it just look not nice. So with the truck, this is the area that will most likely have the reflections from the sun and the lamps, etc. So because there are some bright spots in here, then we need to have this area the darkest to have the bright spots to actually blink. And then this area would be the one that is when you are looking at it from the direction of and the height of the normal person, and this is the one that actually reflects the sky and some of the buildings, so it would be gray. So basically we start with gray at the bottom and go with darker at the top. And also I will use this diagonal line because reasons, yeah, just to make it easier, because if you just go in an angle, this makes all the blending much more difficult. And we should really give it time to dry, because if I now start to blend this with a new layer of the blue-gray, well, maybe I will just show you what happens. So I start with the blue-gray here. Notice is there was some of the brighter paint on my paintbrush, but not much, but this is still showing. So then I use this brighter paint. When I go into the area that is already dark enough and my paintbrush is still moving a lot of bright paint, I just wipe it clean. Yep, wipe it clean, wipe it clean. Yeah, just be careful. So it's not perfect, but it just serves a purpose. You can see that this is still not perfect in here, but with a shiny varnish, gloss varnish, it looks alright. So this is done without any helpers in the form of matte medium or waiting actually to paint for the paint to dry. So I was actually moving the paint that was supposed to be dry in here and forming the brightest spot of the windshield. You don't want to do this. You want to wait for it to dry, like so. So this is dry, this is dry. Now you take some fresh dark blue-gray paint. If it wants to come out. Ugh. Oh God. Yeah. So yeah, that just happened. And yeah, some matte medium in here. You want to use it not on this paint, but on the actual model. So the easiest, I think, is to apply matte medium or any medium, but matte is just what I normally use because most of the colors I use are generally matte. For the windshield, it might be worth to use the gloss medium, but that's just what I have. So you're not limited to using matte medium, and with medium you have much more time to actually play with the paints because they will not dry immediately, but instead you can just feather your way because the paint is still not dry in here thanks to the medium, but you still need to have those initial layers of dark and bright areas, because if you just feather too much of it, then for example here, if I had not have the bright area in the bottom and I just feathered away, then I could have removed the whole area, whole layer of the brighter paint, and suddenly a dark spot appears. Yeah, and it wants to fight you. So I've been working on the windshield of the truck using the medium technique. It's still very difficult, it's still not really following. It has some paintbrush marks in here, so you just apply the medium, this medium, the matte medium, to the middle of the area, and then start with the bright paint and go over the area that was initially painted the bright color. And then once you get like 5 millimeters of it, then you may start with the clean your brush and start with the dark paint and go in the other direction, and then you meet, and then the house ensures. So the paints meet, and then they will, in this case, I think I will need to have some retarder medium also, that actually, because I still feel that the paint dries a little bit too fast here. So this is the area that is really kind of difficult to follow, but as you can see, with the medium I can still sort of work on the paint that I actually have here. So with no fear, don't fear, just use the paint, use the paintbrush, just be quick, don't get your wife and the telly and the postie to actually get you away from this, because this is the world piece in the making. You are actually making too important a thing right now to actually be disturbed. So the world right now has to wait until you have this, I wouldn't call it a perfect blend, because it isn't. Yeah. Sometimes when you are trying to retouch up and you are running out of paint, then just let it dry, do it over again. But yeah, it sort of looks alright. And then you just add some black into these areas, and then some white dots here and some white lines here. That's it.